death penalty for persons under the age of 18, the U.S. Supreme Court noted, "Our society views juveniles as categorically less culpable than the average criminal." This quote, stated by the U.S. Supreme Court, shows just how much juveniles need second chances and can benefit from the rehabilitative system. In other words, juveniles can benefit from professional help with doctors. The rehabilitative system is the United States way of giving juvenile criminals a second chance to learn from their troubled youth lives and get a fresh start. Therefore, my partner Corey and I believe that the resolution stated by the affirmative is harmful to juvenile criminals and will only create more juvenile crime. We believe that the resolution presented to you by the affirmative team, resolved that juvenile criminals should be tried as adults, should not be put into effect. In an adult prison, juvenile criminals are at greater risk of victimization and death, rather than juvenile delinquent centers. If you were to commit a crime and sentenced to 5 years in a prison, would you feel more comfortable with juveniles or in an adult prison with dirty, hairy, sweaty, grown men up to 3 times your age? I would hope that you would rather be sent to a juvenile prison with your own age. For 63% of juvenile criminals, according to the Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Protection Agency, that 63% of juvenile criminals' reality is trying to survive around aggressive grown men when they're sent to adult prisons. They live their lives being beat up, tortured, and threatened by adult inmates. One instance that shows exactly why it is harmful to juveniles to be imprisoned with adults is the story of Jonathan McClard. At age 16, Jonathan was sentenced to 30 years in adult prison for shooting and killing a man. Within 2 weeks of being detained, Jonathan's mother says that he sat across from her at the visitor's window in the prison, bruised and bloodied with wounds and a newly shaved head and a teardrop tattoo under his eye that was not there before. Jonathan's mother, Tracy, says that her son's cellmate was coming off of a meth high when he covered Jonathan's face with his shirt, severely beat him, and shaved his head. Another instance Jonathan had gone through was witnessing a fellow inmate being dragged along the floor out of sight by 4 other inmates. Suddenly, harsh screams pierced Jonathan's ears, and finally the inmate returned, bloodied and beaten by the other 4. This could have easily been 16-year-old Jonathan. In the end, Jonathan hanged himself with a shirt in his cell. The pain caused by the grown inmates depressed Jonathan, and things were not looking up when he got 10 more years in prison. This was Jonathan's easy way out. And this is just one story of a juvenile in an adult prison, and there are many more like it. As it is, adult prisons are filled to their capacity, and adding juvenile delinquent jails would decrease the pressure to fulfill the needs of the adults. Clearly, with the story previously mentioned, there is not nearly enough discipline in adult prisons. Juveniles only learn how to survive in a prison rather than life lessons that they would learn in a juvenile delinquent center with a doctor, or they don't learn how to change their troubled lives. According to the Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Protection Agency, only 37 states have a minimum age to enter a prison. That age is 15. This age needs to be raised to 18 to ensure less violence for juveniles in and out of prison. Current federal laws say that juveniles tried in non-federal courts, meaning county courts, can be sentenced to life in prison without parole in an adult prison, regardless of age. In juvenile prisons, kids are less likely to be sentenced for life and less likely to continue a criminal record when out of jail. Along with rehabilitation and psychiatrists in juvenile prisons, there is much less victimization and death for the juveniles than the juveniles who go to adult prisons. According to the JJDPA, youth held in adult facilities are less likely to rehabilitate than similar offenders remaining in the juvenile system. This means that kids in juvenile prisons are more likely to succeed once out of prison than those juveniles who are sentenced to time in adult prisons. In conclusion, it is important for juveniles to not only be placed in juvenile prisons, but also to learn to rehabilitate their lives. With juvenile prisons in each state, or if each state set up juvenile prisons, the U.S. would be earning a bigger income since fewer inmates would be in adult prisons and fewer inmates would be sentenced for life. Because more juveniles who go to delinquent centers aren't sentenced for life, whereas if they go to adult prisons, they are. Another way that the U.S. will make money through juvenile delinquent centers is because once out of jail, the juveniles are 75% less likely to commit another felony than those juveniles who were detained in adult prisons, according to the Campaign for YouthJustice.org. So with so many plus sides to juveniles being imprisoned in appropriate centers, why not make this change?